So, I've been a bit of a numpty. You know how artists are usually at risk of things like repetitive strain injury or carpal tunnel syndrome? Well, it turns out that some of us can find far more creative ways to injure ourselves, particularly our wrists. And in my case, I managed to twist my wrist just by pushing myself up off the floor after petting Berlioz. Originally, today's video is going to be some animation warm-ups, maybe a few cute character doodles. But seeing as how my right hand is currently out of commission, I figured why not make things harder for myself and try drawing with my left hand instead. I've got a special sketchbook just for warm-up sketches, which started life as a regular lectern book, but I may have performed some mild surgery on it. And by surgery, I mean I pulled out all of the folios and I snipped the little strings holding them together and then sliced them into individual pages, added a bit of extra pizzazz to the inside cover, tucked them all back in and stuck it back together with some laggy bands. So now it's a loose leaf lectern. However, as much as I adore the lectern paper, I couldn't resist this absolute unit of a sketchbook I spotted on Jackson's website. This is Le Maxi, a 250 sheet, 90 GSM heckin' chonker of a sketchbook with a lovely bit of tooth to the paper. So today, we're making some left-handed chaos on this chunky boy instead. And what better way to start warming up than with some bubbles? This is an exercise I always do no matter which appendage I am drawing with, because it's a great way to loosen up your joints and get your hand and your brain talking to each other. Now granted, these bubbles are, let's say, artistically interpreted. Lots of flat edges, lots of room for personal growth, and to be fair, even holding the pencil in my left hand feels like I'm doing it wrong on purpose. But rather than give up and end the video here, I press bravely on and start sketching a little character instead. As with all of my characters, I start off by drawing a ball that will eventually go on to be a head, and some guidelines to help it know which way it's pointing. Two little round egg shapes form the basis of the eyes, and I start speeding up the footage because I want to keep you watching this video for as long as possible, and making it an hour and a half long isn't going to be the best way to do that. I draw little sweepy bits coming out of the side of the head for some cheek fluff, before getting on with adding some pointy little ears so this character can ignore you with perfect precision. I decide that this cat will be some kind of witchy cat, and go about giving her an adorably large brimmed hat and a teeny tiny dress, and some little stumpy legs for her to stand on. A little upright noodle forms the base for her tail, and it's time to give her some little arms to hold some things with. With all the chaotic lines in place, it's time to start refining the shape of the spaghetti into something a little bit more adorable. I start by refining the shape of the head and the brim of the hat, and adding a little bit more detail to the bits where it connects with the top of the hat and the ears. The eyes get a little more definition to them and a 1,000-yard stare that Pokemon Snap would be proud of, and I start drawing in a more definite set of lines to show where the bottom of the head is. The hat gets some more lines added to it, including some shading lines, and I decide it's never too early to start adding in unnecessary details. Her hat gets a tiny bow, and her face finally gets slightly more of a defined nose and mouth before I'm back to adding in more costume details in the shape of a giant bell and bow on her dress collar. Now it's time to break out the mono eraser pencil and clean up some of those unnecessary lines. The head shape gets a bit of a shave, and the back of the hat is cleaned up before I decide that what this little cat really needs in her left hand is some ice cream. Her eyes are mercifully worked on a little more so she can look more cute than vacant, and then the hat gets some extra attention to make its shape flow properly across her head. It's at this stage that I decide that this is a little tabby cat, so I add in some stripes and I decide to give her a slightly cuter mouth with a wider smile. More markings and refinements to the hat start to bring the details to life, with some extra shading added into the little bow that sits by her right ear, and I make her head a little smaller by making the bow on the collar a bit bigger, and I rub away all of those extra lines. With a quick check to make sure she's looking how I want her to, I go ahead and start adding in the details on the bell, and I add in more of the definite shape to her triple flavoured ice cream. I try to use the eraser to add in some extra shine to the bottom of her eyes, but the graphite is layered a little too thick here and it ends up as a subtle smudge instead that I'll pretend was the look I was going for all along, before deepening the shadows behind her cheek floof. I still haven't decided what her right hand is going to be doing other than sort of hovering there looking pretty, so instead I'll just add some tails to the ribbons on her dress collar. It's time to add a little more bounce to her dress, and some toes onto the little stubs she currently has for legs. And while I was doing this I realised, you know what her dress needs? More bows. She gets a little decorative ring of bows all the way around the bottom of her dress, which unfortunately starts to swamp the definition of the hand, so my solution to that is to add in darker outlines and erase some of the extra lines that aren't needed anymore. I make my way back over the feet with some heavier outlines before deciding to add all of those lines back in the form of the twill netting on her dress. Her ears finally get some definition with some extra inner ear fluff and shading before the top of her hat is drawn in and some tiny bits of shading added because I wouldn't want to go overboard on the details. Finally, her tail is added in with some adorable little tabby cat markings, and the whole thing gets a final cleanup pass with the mono eraser, and then this character is all designed and good to go. All that's left to do is add in my signature cube, and then we are all done. I'm genuinely surprised at how this turned out, and although there is a definite roughness to the line work, she turned out so cute. It'll be an interesting challenge to draw her again with my right hand when my wrist is fully recovered, and see which one I prefer. If I prefer my left hand version, then I guess I'll be drawing with my left hand from now on. If you want to try this challenge out for yourself and give drawing with your non-dominant hand a go, then please do feel free to show me what you create. You can tag me either here on YouTube or on Instagram or Threads. I am Thimbleoft on all three. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. And with that, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.